Elon Musk here for the future. It's Robert Phoenix and the Friday FARcast. Elon Musk here for the future. It's Robert Phoenix and the Friday FARcast.
What's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. We're back here for another edition of the Friday FARcast. And this is not going to be a super long episode with me kind of going off on the world, but long enough that we can have a little fellowship and some unique content, hopefully. And maybe if I wait long enough, there'll be some people that show up and decide to jump on in. We got, of course, the infamous DJ MC, Rosie Posey, check it in. The California Contrarian, Centaur Truther, happy Friday, right back to you. Sandra D, what's up, Sandra D? I'm really excited. I get to put together my new bed this weekend. My old bed is a monstrosity. Absolute monstrosity. It was an inherited bed. It's old. It's time. It's time for it to be put out to pasture. And it's on the surface, like it sounds good and everything, but it's just one of the most excruciating sleep experiences I've had. So some of you have actually suggested some really good beds. I found a bed on Amazon. It's always weird when you find a bed that you've never like laid down in. It's kind of like a mail order bride. You never know what's going to come along with the package. You know what I mean? But I found this bed, and like the reviews were, hopefully they're not just all bots, but the reviews were really good for this bed, and the price was like, I can't complain about the price. So anyway, I got that. I got myself a new frame. I got myself some new sheets. I am so looking forward to sleep where I can have hellish dreams and nightmares, which I've had most of my life. Can't wait. Let's see who else we've got. Charlie, what's going on, Charlie? Great choice. The Iran's 2 weeks away guy versus the Iran was planning nuclear suicide vest guy. Yeah, we get into a little bit of the JD Vance versus whoever or whatever Netanyahu is. Who knows, man? Who knows at this point? So we're going to get into that a little bit. We'll also talk about Trump's really bizarre monologue about pens. Now, I'm sure there are a group of people out there, or there's a group of people out there who will decode that pen dialogue as something quite meaningful. I'm sure that the pen thing has some sort of deeper meaning in the Q verse, because nothing is by chance, right? To me, honestly, it's like the rant that somebody who's on speed does. I'll play it for you if you haven't seen it. And what's notable, we'll get into it. There's some notable things about it. So we're going to get into JD Vance versus Trump. Not Trump, although there could be that. JD Vance versus Netanyahu. And we'll get into some of this pen shit, which is surreal and funny. And then I'm going to revisit this thing with Melania and excuse me, in Figure 3, this robot that she did the catwalk with. And it's this international conference of first women and first gentlemen. There's one dude there whose wife is the head of a country. And I went over this yesterday on 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm not sure how many people actually really saw it, but there's a section that I have cordoned off that is sort of towards the end of the show that I want to replay, that is frightful in some ways, but also really telling. So there's that. And then there's an interesting clip from Instagram that I'm going to play that I think is really kind of mind-blowing, actually. Like really mind-blowing. Like some of the stuff that's coming through Instagram is like, I don't do TikTok. I don't want it on my phone, especially now that Larry Ellison is running TikTok. Like it was bad enough for the Chinese. I don't need Larry Ellison and the pipeline to 8200, unit 8200 going through my phone. Although I'm sure most of it does anyway. I just don't want to give them more of a helping hand, if you know what I mean. So there's some really interesting stuff coming through TikTok. Some of the best humor is coming through TikTok. I mean, I'm sorry, Instagram. It's just slaying me, making me laugh. And then there's some really brilliant insights that people are managing to get across in 90 seconds, 2 minutes. Very, very impressive, right? And you can see the power of Pluto and Aquarius really starting to bleed through on Instagram and even Twitter. But there's something happening, right? I mean, I know it's really cliche to say that there's a great awakening, but there is a great awakening happening. Something big, really big is going on. And I've never witnessed anything like this. I've been around this stuff for decades, right? I mean, freaking decades. I mean, the first time I remember having an insight into any of this without any real, like, I always kind of knew that there was conspiratorial shit going on. Like, I never bought the Kennedy assassination, never. Right. And I knew a few things, but I wasn't, fully armed, locked, and loaded. And I've told this story before. I think I might have been about 19 years old, and I was watching C-SPAN, and I was eating some food from the kitchen or whatever, watching TV, and they were talking about how these rockets were coming in from Gaza, right, into Israel. And I didn't know anything really about the situation, but I said to myself, it would make total sense if the Israelis fired those little rockets so that they could have permission to go in and start giving these people absolute hell, right? That was my first perception. And it wasn't wrong, by the way. It was like on the money. So I kind of knew that things were not what they were telling us at all, right? I was not a Reagan file. I was not into it. I was not into the whole Reagan scene. Like, politics just did not interest me whatsoever. I was going, in a very different direction, quote unquote spiritual path, because I knew the way of the world was not through politics, that it was too corrupt, it was too dense and calcified. And that if we were going to have any shot at being free, it was not going to be through the political channel. Just wasn't. So I didn't put my energy in that place. I had lots of friends who were protesters, and they were on the left, and they were protesting these nuclear tests in Nevada, and they were going to Lawrence Livermore Labs and, locking their arms and doing a lot of the stuff that, is happening now, but it was way back then. And it wasn't based on climate. It was more based on the military industrial complex. Later on, it kind of morphed into corporatism, right? So, but I still wasn't really into that, because it's like, well, what good is that doing? Are you really changing the world by getting arrested and going to jail? It didn't make any sense to me. It's like, it was it was better than the other, I think, alternative, which was, going along with the program and, just being a yuppie and being conspicuously consumptive like everybody else. but that didn't really interest me either. So I was always in this weird gray space, this no man's land, but I was always trying to find sort of the deeper kind of meaning behind everything. And really the big moment in time, which I've talked about for me, was 1990 in Gulf War I. That was a huge awakening, like really big. Like what do they call it? The moat came out from my eyes. Not that I didn't see, like I knew things were like off. Right, there is that guy Daniel Sheehan who he did this documentary about Iran Contra, which was really good. In fact, later on when I was at Gaia TV, Daniel Sheehan. So when I would go to Gaia, Regina would have multiple guests, right? So she would have me for like 90 minutes, and she might have Daniel Sheehan. So she might have 2 to 3 guests over about a 3 to 4 day period where they would do all this taping, right? So I was there when Daniel Sheehan was being interviewed by Regina, and I rode back in the limo to the airport with Daniel Sheehan, and I got to talk to him a little bit. And it was, I don't know, it was an interesting conversation. He was with this woman, and he was really into her. They were like in this bubble, and you don't really want to talk to somebody when they're really in their bubble world. So he was involved with something called the Christic Institute, and he did is it Contragate or Iran Contragate, and so that, let me see if I can just find this. I mean, it's actually, if you have not seen it, he got into UFO disclosure. This is just recently. This is like 2025. Like, Daniel Sheen's almost 80 years old now. Let me just see your Daniel Sheen Christic. And this video was really an eye opener. And let me see if I can find the actual video itself. These guys were lefties. But they were kind of good lefties, right? I mean, they were lefties when being on the left actually kind of meant something, right? I mean, this is when the left actually believed in like conspiracy theories. So this is some of the stuff that the Christic Institute was into. Let me just give you guys a bird's eye view here, since you know what I'm talking about. So this is their website, and Iran Contra was the thing that they did a video. Let me see if they have it here on Iran Contra. And let's see. It really blew my mind because it was really a look behind what was going on with Iran Contra. The Iran Contra. I think this is it right here.
Hello, my name is Sarah Nelson. I'm Executive Director of the Christic Institute.
If you haven't seen this, I really recommend it. I'm going to put the link in the chat here. So if you guys want to do some time traveling and get some real gritty on Iran Contra, this is a great video. Okay, really great video. Let me stop the share here. Hold on, I've got to go back. So this is where you're going to find it. You're going to find it on. There's a whole archive of the Christic Institute recordings videos. This one, I think I watched it in 1989, and it really opened my eyes. in terms of how deep the rabbit hole went with like the CIA and everything that was going on. Like real, name I'll never forget Per Aker Hansen, who was this double agent who's pretty prominent in Iran Contra, and kills a bunch of people, and it gives you a slice as to how these guys can morph, from one side to the other and back again. So anyway, 1990 rolls around, and the eyes open, and so we've been on this journey, ever since, for quite a long time. And back in the day, depending on where you lived and who you hung out with, like I was living in Olympia, Washington when it happened, and there were some people in Olympia, Washington, who knew the fuck what was going on, and it was kind of interesting in that way. Like I had people that I could commiserate with, and we could talk about stuff with. It was fascinating. It was a really fascinating time. It's my first exposure to Bill Cooper coming through Evergreen University, which that would never happen again. Today's equivalent would be Alex Jones going to Evergreen and giving a 2-day talk. It would never happen, right? They would burn the place down. But back in the 90s, it could happen because the universities were still a place where you could have an exchange of ideas, even a place like Evergreen College in Olympia. So being out on the fringe has been at times a lonely yet very satisfying existence, because I've always felt okay with being an outsider. I've always felt like an outsider my entire life. And what's interesting now is watching how many outsiders are all coming together and waking up and having very, very insightful takes on what's going on with reality. And it feels to me like we're in this really interesting period where the metaphysics of reality, time, matter, space, they're all having this strange confluence. And I was watching, and you guys are probably aware of this, right? I was watching this video, and there are these people that will take DMT, and they'll have like a laser, like a green laser, and they'll look at it and they'll see all of this code inside the laser, and it looks sort of slightly alien, slightly Cyrillic, right? It's a very unusual, it's a code. And then when they put their arm between the laser and their DMT soaked eyes, they see a different version of the code. And what's really bizarre is when you get 3 or 4 people all in the same room, they've all done DMT, they're all seeing the same code at the same time when they do the laser thing. So it's not just one person's experience, multiple people are having the same experience, right? So it's a really interesting kind of look behind the curtain of reality. Okay, so I'm going somewhere with this. So what we're seeing now in the Middle East and in other parts of the world, Washington, D.C., et cetera, is we're seeing the formation of a particular type of code, right? If we were able to have the DMT experience with the laser, and we would have the war as like the screen or the scrim in which is projected, we would see a code. We would see a code for exactly what is happening. Okay? There's a code for it. And the code might alter a bit or change, or might just be a standard code for the particular event. But based on what these people did and they put their physical form inside the code changed. So the idea here is that there is a possibility that we can change the code. Right now, we're really into sort of the neo matrix territory, right? Where we become conscious and we become aware and we become aware of the scripts, right? We become aware of the code. The first script that we become aware of is the illusion of a two-party system. That's a code. Like there is a code for that. There's a script for that. And people fall into that code and script. They fall into the left side. They fall into the right side. It is a code, right? And what people are realizing now is that that script and that code does not work. It doesn't function in the way that it did, say, let's go back to Obama, right? We'll go to Obama or we'll go to Trump. Let's go Trump 2016, Hillary versus Trump. What's the code, right? The code is, oh my God, we're going to get Hillary and she's going to be terrible. And she's going to be the worst, she's going to be the dark mother goddess, right? She's going to be Kali. She's going to eat everybody, which may not be too far from the truth, actually. And then there's Trump. Oh, we'll take Trump because there's another code that goes along with Trump, right? And the Trump code was disturber, outsider, wild card, right? Like this is a different code. So people are reading that code. And then what it does is it connects in with kind of certain neurotransmitters and neuroresponders in their brain that says this is a better choice. And it's all based on code. It is all based on code. If the DMT stuff is right, everything is based on some kind of a code. And I'm not necessarily saying it's alien code but there's something here, right? Everything is, if you were to look at, like, say, a lima bean plant, there'd be a code for the lima bean plant. And the code for a lima bean plant would be different than a tobacco plant. Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything is based on some form of code. And inside of that code is the genetic matrix of the thing that we're looking at, right? So just keep that in mind. So this thing in Iran has a code associated with it. And what happens is that people respond to the code, right? They either respond to it through fear, through apprehension, through anger, through more mistrust, all these things that are, I think, reasonable, right? Some people may respond to it differently. Like, this is the greatest thing that happened to America since sliced bread. We get to go out, we get to kick some ass, and we get to John Wayne this thing, right? Free a bunch of people, free up the Gulf, and make sure that our good friends in Israel get to maintain their sovereign religious state. That's a code. There's variations on it, but it's still a code, right? But what happens when we see through the codes? What happens when all the illusions stop working for us, right? Then what happens? Then how does reality change? And we're getting closer. We're getting much closer to that happening. I'll show you a video today. It's a little snippet from Instagram. And one of the reasons why, I'll tell you one of the reasons why. And I'll link it to this thing that I did yesterday on Figure 3 and Melania 2000 and the catwalk. I'll link it to that because once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Once you see the the Hunger Games scripting of the whole thing, you can't unsee it. If you have any modicum of perception, if you have any modicum of soul, and you are not an NPC, right? You cannot unsee what I'm going to show you. So that's part of what we're here to talk about today. I wanted to give you something positive to hang your hat on, because things can get really, really negative. Okay. I can't sugarcoat that. We've looked at the astrology ad infinitum, right? We have Uranus coming into Gemini. We have Neptune in Aries. We have Saturn in Aries. We have Pluto in Aquarius. Boys and girls, that's fire and air, right? And later this spring, early summer, we got Jupiter going into Leo, and that's just more fire, right? The skies are combustible. They're combustible. It's heat. It's explosive, right? And I was talking with a good friend of the show, Lisa, this morning, briefly over text. And another astrologer was talking about these exoplanets, right? Planets beyond the planets. And John Lear gets into this as well. John Lear believes there's 30 planets in our solar system. And I don't really have a problem with that, right? Our perception of the solar system is probably quite limited. And take spaces, gay and fake, just out of it, right? We'll roll with this model. So this astrologer, I believe his name is Lynn Coiner or something like that, talked about the Scorpio kind of overlay from these exoplanets. You don't even have to go that far, right? All you got to do is look at the outer planets inside of our solar system, which are air, right, and fire. It's all combustible. So we're looking at a massive heat wave this summer. Massive heat wave. Like, I think it's going to get really bad. I think we're going to see, skeletal cattle. We're headed into a period that feels, and again, I'm not a Bible thumper, but it feels biblical, right? The conditions have been created for famine, for drought, for kind of, mass death. Lockdowns, they're on the way, right? We're going to be dealing with even days, off days, like be able to drive your car. Like if your license plate ends in an even number, that's your day to drive. And if it's in an odd number, that's your day to drive. Might be your day to actually buy petrol as well, right? We are headed down this path. And it's all because of what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening in Iran. This is going to be like a COVID 2.0. It's another lockdown, right? Now, the severity of this is much greater than it was during COVID, right? Because if they go down this path and we go even odd, and you're out on your day and you got a license plate that is on the wrong day, and maybe you just forget, you can be really fucked, right? Really, really fucked. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I have to be in some ways because it's just kind of how I'm wired. So what do we do, right? What do we do? Well, it gets back to this idea of the code. In seeing, first of all, we have to detach, right? We have to detach from that world in some way. And I think it's important to touch base with it and see where it's at and poke fun with it. But to get swept up in the drama of it is not good for us. It's not good. And if I were you, and I kind of am you because we're having this together, I would do my best to focus on the things that really matter, which are your health, right? Which are your resources, which are your creative capacity. your networks and your friends, right? These are all vital. These are resources that are going to be in demand in the months and the years to come. You're going to need all of these things, right? Because the system that we've depended upon to deliver those things, that's going away. That is going away. What we're dealing with here is a great reset moment. You know, they had the run up, COVID, right? That was the run up. Well, here we are. You know, and it's gonna be the inability to travel, the lockdown, the movement away from petroleum fuel and petroleum based products. Those are all going to go away, right? And guess what? Food production. Whether you like, you know, big ag or not, it's going to go away. And so what will be the replacement? Well, you know, they'll have shit like lab grown meat. Bill Gates has the patent on it. You know, that's already happening. You know, even vegetables, right? They'll figure out a new way to create some kind of synthetic fucking vegetable. You know, don't rule out worms and bugs and crickets and all these other things, right? That are in abundance that they'll somehow figure out that these are really, really good for us. That this is a complete resource that, you know, is not being tapped and that it won't strain the planet. These are going to be the food sources of the future. And I don't want to sound, you know, too much of a dark alarm, but you can kind of see where this is headed. You don't have to be fucking Nostradamus to understand this, right? It's all happening now. And it could get just exponentially worse before it gets better. And, you know, we've got this period in April coming up with all these planets in Aries. And it is a highly, highly combustible time. Lots of conflict, lots of violence, lots of strife, right? So the idea here is to unplug and figure out how to change the code, right? And that means you have to change the code inside of yourself. Something that I'm actually working on, right? Because for me, it's like, it's really easy for me to go to the dark place. I can go to the dark place all the time. It's easy. Pull it apart, disassemble it, shine a light on it. Here you go. Throw some humor, you know, make you laugh a little bit so it's not as scary and spooky, right? So the alteration of my code is to, and I'm not a Pollyanna guy. I've never been good at Pollyanna. I've never been good at it. But what I have been good is when I have momentum in my life and I feel like, you know, I'm chasing the comet's tail and that there's something powerful. There's something electromagnetic about being alive, right? And I think a lot of you know what that feels like. And that's where we need to be. That's where we need to get. And it's really difficult during a time like this to achieve those kinds of states. But in a lot of ways, it's the ultimate form of mastery as well. Because if you can do that, if you can feel that electromagnetic response inside of yourself, and knowing that you're aligned with your true north, in the midst of a time where everything seems to be falling apart at the seams, you have graduated to the next level. You have gotten to a place where whatever is going on with reality doesn't really affect you. It doesn't affect you. And you can't fucking fake it. See, this is the big part. You can't fake it. You can say, well, it just doesn't affect me. Well, there's some truth to that. And that may be a good place to start. I guarantee you'll get tested on that. We say, oh, well, let's see what does affect you, right? But when you're in that that electromagnetic true north. We'll even call it the Christ consciousness, just for the sake of vocabulary. When you're in that place, nothing can touch you. Nothing can touch you. And I'm not even talking about it from a religious standpoint, right? What you've done is you've cleared away the clutter, right? And you've changed the code. You've changed your internal code. And there's ways that you can do it. Like there's so many techniques out there, right? There's sunshine, there's grounding, there's all these things. You know, we've got these red lights, we've got binaural beats. We have a lot of things that can help us fine tune our frequencies, fine tune our vibrations. And that's how we change the code. And when enough of us change the code, then the code of reality itself begins to change. This is how it gets done. It's not going to be about protesting. It's not going to be about revolution at the barrel of a gun. It's about when literally the matrix begins to shift when enough people have cracked the code. That's what this is about. And it's your own individual journey, right? It's your own individual piece of discovery. And we all have challenges. We all have our various challenges around it. But once you get there and you're holding on like it's the tail of a comet, you know that you're in a good place. And we all have limiting structures in our lives, whether they're our jobs, our relationships, our families, and these are hard. These are the densities, right? These are the anchors of density that hold us down. And sometimes we have to either do one of two things, right? We have to find a new code that allows us to shift those relationships in a way that we don't have to do anything. They just shift, but something inside of us has to shift, right? Something inside of us has to shift. And it's doable. But you yourself have to have the inner revelation to do that. You can't depend on these other people changing for you. They're not going to change for you. They're just there as a reminder that you need to change for you. And then when you change for you, then the relationships pivot and shift, and they either stay there and they become different, or you don't have those relationships anymore. And they may not necessarily end in strife. They can end in love, right? They can end in understanding. They don't always have to end in heartache and heartbreak. And if they do, it's a heart that breaks. It's a breaking of the heart that breaks it open. And I think all of you understand that on some level. So I'm just giving you all of this up front right now. And I'll return to it a little bit later when I play this one Instagram video. But for now, indulge me as we take a look at the latest with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu. I guess we can throw Trump in here. So apparently they had a conversation. And there is a quality of J.D. Vance which puts him in sort of the Republican Obama territory. But I also think there's something human about J.D. Vance. There's something very human. There's something organic, analog. Marco Rubio does not strike me as being analog. I'll show you a little bit about Rubio in a second. So am I a rah-rah for Vance? Not really, but he seems like, first of all, he's a millennial, okay? And the millennials are starting to come into power, right? The millennials, the oldest millennials are now 40. And I've always felt that part of the millennial challenge has been going through Pluto and Scorpio and going through sort of the death, right? The death of ideals, the death of the system. And a lot of them have that Neptune Uranus conjunction in Capricorn, which is sort of the radical remake of the system. Capricorn is the system, the hierarchy, the administrative powers, and the dissolution of those powers. That's Neptune in Capricorn. Uranus in Capricorn is a radical breakthrough and a break with those powers. So the early onset of that for the millennials resulted in a lot of Antifa and a lot of statues coming down, right? You can see that. But I think there's another layer to the millennials now that's starting to come around and wake up. Now, I know a lot of you don't follow sports. And sometimes I get a rap about talking about sports too much. But there's been this really interesting development in the sports commentary world. And it is these three guys who have triangulated. And two of them have an ongoing beef, which has become kind of epic. And then the third is sort of triangulated between the two of them. And of course, I'm referring to Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith. Jason Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith are contemporaries. I think they're kind of more Gen X-y. Stephen A. Smith makes a shit ton of money. Like, he's really successful, but he's also a sellout and a liar. And Jason Whitlock calls him out on it all the time. All the time. And it gets to the point where Stephen A. Smith is so tired of Jason Whitlock calling him out on it that he has gone into these tirades on his show about Jason Whitlock. So Cam Newton and Jason, they had been beefing as well. Cam Newton used to play for the Carolina Panthers, and Cam is trying to carve out a niche for himself in the podcast space. And Cam is really eccentric. He's really, really eccentric. He's a fashionista. He wears these eccentric hats. He's got a very interesting way of communicating. So Cam Newton decides to have Jason Whitlock on his show. Keep in mind, Cam Newton's a millennial, and Cam Newton was kind of he was on the culture side, right? There's a term for it called the culture. The culture meaning the black culture and everything that supposedly goes along with it, from barbecue to Jay-Z, right? And all the other stuff that kind of goes in between. And Cam Newton was decidedly on that side. He came to the defense of Joy Taylor, who Jason Whitlock was beefing with. And so Cam was definitely kind of on that millennial woke side. But then he has Jason Whitlock on, and they have a really interesting dialogue. A very interesting dialogue. And Cam Newton flips, begins to turn, right? And it's this Pluto and Scorpio, because he's a millennial, and you can see the transformation happening, right? He's no longer going to be kind of the step and fetch it for the culture, right? He's going to start to think for himself as a man. And he got a lot of heat for platforming Jason and not pushing back enough on Jason. So this is my commentary that's related to JD Vance. JD Vance is a millennial, right? And I'm using Cam Newton as a parallel for JD Vance. JD Vance is breaking from the establishment, and the establishment that found him, created him, and then propped him up to the point where he was vice president. just put aside from the fact that J.D. Vance may be Erica Kirk's brother, and he may have been female, and now he's male, whatever. Just put that aside for now, okay? We could go down that rabbit hole, but it wouldn't be very helpful for the discussion. I think this is more helpful, right? So what we're seeing, the first time I saw it was when J.D. Vance went to Israel. This was recently. This was a couple months ago. J.D. Vance did not go to the wall. That is huge. Instead, he went to an old church in Jerusalem. That was it was him sending a signal that he's not like the other guys. So let's read this. J.D. Vance intense call with Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's PM, for selling easy Iran war to Trump. J.D. Vance confronted Benjamin Netanyahu in a tense phone call, accusing the Israeli leader of being overly optimistic about the chances of regime change in Iran. The vice president told the Israeli leader on Monday that many of his predictions about the war which he had sold to Donald Trump had not materialized. Despite the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, headline factions have tightened their grip, and the regime remains firmly in control. So this is one of the things that people like Scott Ritter and some of these other military guys, McGregor, have said. Like, you had the one guy in the Iranian regime who was probably more open to negotiation than anybody else, and you take him out, and now you've got his son or whoever who is not open to it because, number one, father died, apparently had cancer, so he knew he was going. And number two, like, look at all the shit you've done. We've had 2 rounds of negotiations, and 2 times you stabbed us in the back. Right? So they took out the one guy that they could have a negotiation with. Before the war, Bibi really sold it to the president as being easy, as regime change being a lot likelier than it was. The VP was clear-eyed about some of those statements, a source told Axios. Now, it's interesting, like, who's the source? This is important. Because what J.D. Vance is doing is J.D. Vance is trying to salvage his political career. Right? He can see that he's being left in the dust by Marco Rubio. He's become sort of the redheaded stepchild. He sees all of these derogatory memes, and he does not want to be associated with a war that seems doomed to fail from the beginning. So somebody in J.D. Vance's camp is letting this conversation out. I don't know who it is. It could be his press secretary. I don't know who it is. But he's doing this for self-preservation. Okay? Vance, who reportedly advised Trump against going to war with Iran, was appointed by the president to help lead negotiations to end the conflict. Well, the reason why is because they don't trust what's his name? Steve Witkoff. They don't trust him. They don't trust Jared Kushner because they were involved before and they got fucked over. Like, okay, well, maybe Vance, he's got a brown wife. We don't trust the other two. The day after Vance is called Netanyahu, a right-wing Israeli news outlet owned by GOP donor Miriam Adelson, this is interesting, reported that the vice president had yelled at Netanyahu over Israeli settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. Oh, that's interesting. That's really, I know that newspaper in Israel. White House officials who described the story as false began suspecting the Israelis planned it to try to smear Vance. An Israeli official denied that Netanyahu had planted the story and said his office issued a full denial when approached by reporters. The Daily Mail contacted the vice president's office for comment. Vance has been actively involved in diplomacy with Iran the last few days as Trump seeks to end the conflict in the coming weeks. The vice president met with Emirati officials, as well as the prime minister of Qatar on Thursday at meetings focused on ending the war and providing aid to Gulf allies. The White House suggested to foreign diplomats that Vance could lead a U.S. delegation for high-level peace talks with Iran last weekend. Pakistan, Egyptian, and Turkish mediators were told by the White House to tell the Iranians that their willingness to have Vance lead the talks was proof that Trump was serious. Trump on Thursday extended the deadline to not strike Iranian energy plants, writing on True Social, as per Iranian government request, please let this statement represent that I am pausing the period of energy plant destruction by 10 days to Monday, April 6th. That's when we're getting into all this Aries shit. Talks are ongoing, and despite erroneous statements to the contrary by the fake news media and others, they're going very well. We don't know that. We don't know that. The 15-point plan modeled on Trump's Gaza deal would require Iran to dismantle all nuclear and long-range missile capabilities, open the Strait of Hormuz, and abandon proxy terror groups. But Iranian state TV on Wednesday said that the regime had rejected the ceasefire proposal and said Tehran is demanding the closure of all U.S. bases in the Gulf, reparations, and an end to Israeli military strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Tehran is also seeking to bring the strait a choke point for roughly a fifth of the world's oil under its control, allowing it to charge transit fees on passing vessels. Okay, so let's just break that down for a minute. I think the figure is that since they started charging tolls, Iran has made somewhere between $1.3 to $1.5 million per day. And that's without full traffic going through the Straits. 10 days, what, 12 million, 13 million, 14 million dollars. Doesn't sound like much, but if you wanted to rebuild some drones, $14 million goes a long ways. So what would be the negotiable points? If you're Iran, getting rid of all your missiles, that is just a non-starter, because you've seen how these people have operated in the past. They are not trustworthy. Non-starter. What do you want? What do you want? You want to be on the show? Do you want to lead negotiations? Should I send you to Tehran? Huh? If I send you to Tehran, you might be able to do something. If you haven't figured it out. It's really not that complex. She wants food. You're Iran. The missile thing is just a non-starter. It's a non-fucking starter. Right? Like, it's like, no, if we do that, sets us up to become Libya. Sorry, not going to happen. We've seen this movie before. It doesn't end well. So if you're the United States, you're like, okay, can we give them the missiles? Maybe we can play a little loosey-goosey with that. There's a little wiggle room with the missiles. So maybe they can work that out, right? Maybe they can kind of say, well, your missiles can only go so far or whatever, right? And Iran goes, okay. Yes, we agree, right? Let's talk about them running the Straits of Hormuz. That means they now have power over every single Gulf state. Every single Gulf state. Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, right? Every single Gulf state, they've got power over it. Do you think those Gulf states want to give Iran total control of the Strait of Hormuz? Because they can shut it down anytime they want. They can raise the tolls anytime they want. They can play most favored nation status anytime they want. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, because the Egyptians, well, they do control the Suez Canal. So it's not like there isn't precedent for a country to control a waterway. Theoretically, China controls the Panama Canal. Theoretically, right? So let's say Iran does get control of the Straits of Hormuz. You can build in certain bullet points or contract points. First of all, you could say that the tolls cannot exceed X amount of dollars, right? Number one, you could put a cap on the tolls. Number two, you make sure that Iran has to do all their tolls through the American dollar. Okay, you'll agree to it, but it all has to be purchased through American dollars. Right? There's a cap, and then maybe every 2 years or 3 years, you get to have a percentage over the cap. Right? But the deal is that the dollar still becomes a de facto currency. So, okay, we'll give you the Strait of Hormuz. You can control it. But here's what you have to do. There's a cap, and you got to pay it all in dollars. So then what do you tell the Gulf states? You tell the Gulf states, well, listen, you got this deal, which is not the best deal, but it's the best deal that we have for now. Right? Until we can figure else something out. You know, by the way, we got this Ben Gurion Canal that we're building in Israel. Just hold on long enough until we build this Ben Gurion Canal and we can find a way around it. And we can, figure out a way to get you through there. Possibly, right? Now, as far as abandoning bases, that's if you're the U.S. and your job, right, your commitment to these countries was to protect them, that's a non-starter. Non-starter. If you were Trump and the Trump administration, the bold move, this would be the ultimate bold move, is that you come back to Iran and you say, here's what we're willing to do. We're willing, but you cannot leak this. This is an important part of the deal. We can't abandon those bases. But our $3 billion defense deal with Israel is going to be up at the end of this year. We're not going to renew it. We're not going to renew it. If you're Iran, you're like, whoa, okay. Let's do the math on this. So you're not going to give Israel $3 billion a year, but you're still going to have bases in the Gulf. If I'm Iran, I'm taking that deal. I am taking that deal every single day of the week because it cuts the legs out from under Israel. And if you're the United States and public sentiment is really going against Israel at this point, and you may piss off some Christians, and you may piss off some Lindsey Grahams, but at the end of the day, I think more people will be much happier with that deal. And by the way, there's a huge amount of people leaving Israel as it is. Huge amounts. They're going to Ghana, they're going to Argentina, they're going to Thailand. Like the rats are jumping ship. So what are you investing there in anyway? Just make the deal. Say we're done. The deal is done anyway. It's like it comes to a close at the end of the year. But you say to Iran, look, you cannot broach this, right? This is a very important part of the deal. If you broach it, we'll go back on the deal and we'll re-up with them and we'll give them more money, right? This is a hard line in the sand. So let's go over this, right? Because you gotta save some face here. You have to save some face. So you say yes to Iran, you can run the Straits, but every transaction must go through the US dollar. Period. End of story. Like, okay, we can do that. You tell the Gulf states, look, it's the best we can do for now. We put some price hikes, some price ceilings on these things so they can't raise the tolls indiscriminately, right? Every 2 years, they get to review it, and at the most, they can raise it by a certain amount of percentage. And all you have to do is charge a little bit more for your oil, and you can make it back. Easy done, right? You tell Iran can't abandon the bases. We have commitments and agreements with them, but we'll stop funding Israel. There's your deal. There's your deal. Now, when it happens, will Israel be pissed? Damn right they'll be pissed, right? But it takes us out of the hornet's nest. That's how I do the deal. That is how I do the deal. And everything should be on the table. All right. I want to play you this video with Trump in the pen. If you haven't seen this, it is absolutely, utterly bizarre. Oh, did you see this thing about Kash Patel? The Iranians cracked his personal email and shit. Kash is a party boy. He's a total party boy. I got to show you guys this. Look at this. FBI director Kash Patel hacked by Iran as embarrassing private photos and emails leak online. So he had his email hijacked. So they've got Patel on vacation in Cuba, sniffing a cigar, reclining in a chair, and posing next to a large bottle of Havana Club rum. In one photo, he's posing next to a vintage car, and another next to a large bronze statue. Patel is also shown at a bar in Mexico's Puerto Vallarta and in an office space, what appears to be Washington, D.C. Kash is a party boy. There's his party girl, Alexis. So there he is, right? Let's zoom in on that. He looks wasted. There's the rum. He's got that nice Cuban rum. He's got that old Chevy. Loves those Cuban cigars. That's Tehran. He's a Pisces. He loves the party. All right, let me show this. I gotta find this Trump thing. All right, you gotta watch this. To me, this is, I don't know. I've been around people who've been speeded out, who talk like this, who go on these little rants. And keep your eyes on Marco Rubio here, both by position and his facial expression. So Trump is talking about the new Federal Reserve building and how he could have done a much better job building it and for less money.
It's a very sad thing that's happened with the Fed. And then just one other thing very quickly, you have Gavin Newsom in California Railroad That's 100 times over budget.
Recently? No, it's been going on for like a decade.
It's out of control. It was supposed to go from the middle of San Francisco to the middle of LA. Well, now it stops way short of both. It now goes into areas that nobody ever heard of. It's billions and billions of dollars over budget, years and years, maybe decades late.
So that, you know what that is? That is cover for how much they're spending in Iran, which to date, and I've got the figure, is $30 billion. Wrap your head around that. $30 billion so far in Iran.
And that's why we have a country that has a lot of problems. You know, we have incompetent people. It's all people. Think of this, Federal Reserve.
You hired some of these fucking incompetent people. We just saw one of them. He spends most of his time getting drunk and flying his little girl toy around to Cuba and Mexico, and he's partying in Italy with the American hockey team. Talk about incompetent. Dan Bongino, oh, he's the poster boy of competence.
I would have had that building done for $25 million. I would have, if I did it, it was up to somebody else would have done it for more. So maybe 50. But you could have done that building if it was properly done and planned. You would have done that building I would have done it for 25 million, and it would be better. It would be better. See this pen right here? This pen is an interesting example. It's the same thing. So this pen is very inexpensive, but it writes well. I like it. But I can't have the pen the way it was. You know what it is. I don't want to give too much publicity, but they do treat me well, Sharpie. So I came here, they have $1,000 pens. And you know, you hand pens out, you're signing and you hand them out, you're handing them to all these people. Sometimes you have 30, 40 people. And they were $1,000 a piece. Beautiful pen, ballpoint. 1,000, it was gold, silver, gorgeous. But I'm handing out to kids that don't even know what they're. What is this, mommy? It's kids. They're getting a pen for $1,000. They have no idea what it is. And I feel guilty because I'm like, you know, I'm by nature, I don't, you know, it's the government. I love the government like I love myself economically. I want to save money. So I'm saying, this is crazy. And it had another problem. They didn't write well. So I take it out and I sign and there's no ink. And I got all you people looking and you say, there must be something wrong with Trump. And I'm signing and there's no ink in the pen and it costs $1,000. This one, I called the guy. I said, I'd like to use your pen, but I can't have a gray thing with a big S on it saying Sharpie. As I'm signing a $1 trillion airplane contract to buy brand new fighter jets, brand new B-2 bombers, of which we just ordered plenty. I can't do that with the press. Use your pen, but I like the pen the best. But I'll sign it. I could do like Biden did, you know, give it to somebody else to sign or an auto pen, or maybe sign it separately in another room, but I can't use your pen. He said, well, I can make it nicer. I said, what can you do? He said, I'll paint it black. I said, that's nice. And I can even paint the White House on it, sir, if you like, in gold. Almost real gold, not bad. And I can even do your signature, sir. And by the way, this was not staged. I just saw the pen sit there and I thought that this is an example of how $25 million spent by me at the Federal Reserve Building would be a better job than $4 billion that they're spending. And you know, one of the things that Kevin Warsh told me, he said they ripped down the nicest building. I don't know what building they're talking about. They ripped down a building, Scott, right? Kevin Warsh said it's the most beautiful building in Washington. He said the most beautiful space. They ripped it down. Why did they do that? I don't know. Do you know what he's talking about? Is it true?
Yes, sir.
They ripped it down. We have a moron at the Fed. Who wouldn't be lowering interest rates right now? But I want to thank Janine Pirro and Pam and her group for having the courage
to get me new pens. I mean, I get it on the surface, right? But it's a really bizarre, totally bizarre rant about a pen. And, he's going off script. He's good at going off script. Sun Uranus conjunction. What you don't see is Rubio, and Rubio does not crack a smile at all. He actually kind of looks at Trump with a little bit of disdain. So where's JD Vance? He's across the table. He's not visible at all. Not visible at all. Rubio's the right-hand man. So you know that Donald Trump is now going to have his signature on the dollar bill. So what he's done is he's basically supplanted the head of the Federal Reserve, whose signature. Now, there are people who are going to say, oh, look, there's no more Fed, right? Trump is now the Fed. And this would be like a sign that the old structure is going away. Well, that could be true, right? Because the Fed was started by the Rothschilds through the Rockefellers and Preacher Jekyll Island. We all know that shit. But are they going to need a Fed if they have a CBDC? Unequivocally, the answer to that is no. They won't need it. They'll have a completely different system running that system, a completely different department running that system. Okay, so I want to play you this thing from yesterday. And it's from my Rumble show. And this is Melania Trump and the robots. Like somebody could write a children's book about this. And, they're walking together, and the robot looks actually a little more human than Melania. And it's all these first women and one first man. And they're talking about, it's the most ridiculous fucking Hunger Games thing that you could imagine. They're all babbling about how AI is going to be such a great thing for children in schools, and how we must protect the children by using responsible AI. And it's completely bizarre. The whole thing's bizarre, but I'm going to play you the last part of it. And this is with Sarah Netanyahu. She's there. Like, there's this war raging, theoretically, Middle East or countries on fire. People are trying to get out, go to Argentina, go to Thailand, go to Crete, go to Ghana, all these places. And she's going to sit there and talk about how important AI is for children. So this is my commentary from yesterday. I think it's good. And I get into Palm Beach Pete as well. So let me play this. This is from yesterday. And I want you to pay attention to the woman from Bosnia Herzegovina. Okay, so this is just a bit of the preamble. Here we go. Senegal. The Seychelles. We're back to the U.S. Bolivia, Equatorial Guinea. Back to the U.S. The U.S. Where's she from? Estonia. Bosnia Herzegovina. Isn't that looks like Sarah Netanyahu? That's Sarah Netanyahu. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Let's take a listen here.
Focus not only on the future generation of America, but also on the future of children around the world.
All right, let's clock this woman next to her. How do you think she feels about Sarah Netanyahu? Yeah, I think if expressions can give us a sense of what might really be going on here, I don't think she's really that into her.
This gathering is about taking a moral stand. It expresses our commitment to all children, understanding.
She's not too happy. You know, doesn't even say Israel on there. She's got a blank card.
The technology brings great benefits to the next generation, but technology also brings great challenges.
This is just ridiculous. It's so performative.
Alongside my role as the wife of Israel's prime.
What do you think this woman would do with her if they were left alone in the same room? I think it could get catfight ugly.
Minister, I have been working for more than 2 decades as an expert child psychologist.
She won't even look at her. Wow. She will not even look at her. Oh, I was just corrected. It's not Linda McMahon. I don't know who that person is. She's not even looking at her.
For the city of Jerusalem. Through my work, I meet children and teenagers in the most critical moments of their lives.
Yeah, right. Like Palestinian children, Palestinian teenagers. Maybe if they'd had robot teachers extolling the virtues of Judaism, they may have been better off.
Through anxiety and ongoing stress, and especially now during days of war.
Yeah, right. War that you're fucking responsible for. This woman won't even give her the fucking time of day.
Day after day, I listen to their fears, their dilemmas, their silence, and also their dreams. I see their pain, but I also see their strength.
Yeah, right. From your penthouse apartment in Miami, your penthouse condo in Miami, you can see them. You can really see them off in the distance.
Over the years, I have learned something simple yet essential. Every child needs someone who will notice them.
Except a Palestinian child. Except the Palestinian child. They don't need to have anybody notice them. In fact, the less noticing, the better there, right? But I'll tell you what, Sarah Netanyahu, there are a lot of children now who are starting to notice, right? The noticing goes in both directions, right? Like, oh yeah, the children are noticing something about what's going on in the world that you have your bloody little claws smeared all over with.
Believe in them and give them the tools they need to open new doors.
Yeah, like a crowbar on your head. That's the tools they're looking for. You fucking crowbar, and let me show you. Let me show you what we've learned, what we've noticed.
Today, some of those doors are digital. Technology can separate people, but it can also bring them together. It can endanger some, but save others.
Yeah, can endanger some, but save others. Who wrote this mishmash? It's embarrassing.
When used properly, it can reduce gaps, identity difficulties early.
And this woman's like, I got to sit next to this bitch. Who, I mean, not just listen to her, but she said, I got to sit next to this bitch the whole time.
And give children new tools of language, knowledge, confidence, and creativity.
This is bad presentation. All right, what's this dude doing back here? He's like, are you shitting me?
As Winston Churchill once said, with great opportunity comes great responsibility. Children cannot navigate alone in the digital world. They need protection.
She has not glanced in her direction one time. Wow. So there you go. The midwives of the digital revolution and children coming into your schools to educate your children. It's okay. Melania's into it, right? And the whole thing just seemed like, like a convention for Jeffrey Epstein client states, except for the black ones. Jeffrey Epstein did not like black women. Out the door. Speaking of Jeffrey Epstein, this Palm Beach Pete thing is not going away. People are not letting go of the Palm Beach Pete thing because there are people who think that it is now Jeffrey Epstein hidden in plain sight. Like, apparently he's living in this is unconfirmed. Apparently he's living in Jeffrey Epstein's old house, driving Jeffrey Epstein's car, right? Like there's this, and there are people who are very into this Palm Beach Pete thing. Well, I have a solution. I have a solution to figuring out whether or not he's actually Jeffrey Epstein. It's easy. Just take off his pants. It's all you got to do is take off his pants, because if his member looks like an egg, ladies and gentlemen, we got a match. Now, if his member looks like a regular penis, unless Jeffrey Epstein has some sort of surgical procedure, which I don't think really exists, although he probably, I don't know, if he could have done it, he might have done it, but he didn't do it. And we know that he was an egg, right? Or a lemon, whatever you want to call it. So I wonder, right? I wonder if we could just have a reveal. Like if Jeffrey Epstein, Palm Beach Pete, would you mind showing us your dick? This would put all the rumors to rest. And we don't even have to show it. We just need to see it and verify it. That's it. That's it. That's all you got to do. Just pull the pants off the situation. And maybe that's what, could you imagine that? Could you imagine people like chasing down Palm Beach Pete and just like taking him and holding him down to the ground and pulling his pants off? And there's all these cell phones trying to figure out, if he's got the thing that's going to differentiate him from Jeffrey Epstein. Like that would be I'm actually kind of envisioning that, right? Senator Angela Gambia. Okay, so I just wanted to play that because of the absurdity, the absolute absurdity of the Sarah Netanyahu thing. The absolute absurdity of it. Phoenix, we're too old to prepare your soul for your transition. It's okay, Charles. Charles, I'm willing to live with my life and my life choices. I'm willing to live with my life and my life choices. It's the way it is. Way it is. But listen, man, you give me 6 months without drinking and gambling in your life, and let's see how that goes for you. Right. Just saying. I wanted to play you one more thing before I get out of here. And it is something that was sent to me. And it was really, really smart. Really smart. And this brings us back to like the beginning of the show and the breaking of the code. And this just goes to show you how many people and why the Jeffrey Epstein, whatever you think of the Jeffrey Epstein thing, why it is such a pivotal event in human history. I guess history includes humans, just history in general. And the reason why, and I get back to this, right? Jeffrey Epstein, based on his astrological chart, his sun sign is 1 Aquarius. And we just had Pluto, right, during this whole thing, conjunct Jeffrey Epstein's sun. And then if you go back and you look at all those planets in Capricorn, which crossed Pluto, right, and crossed Jeffrey Epstein's sun, it brought us into a collective moment where the files were dumped. And all of a sudden, people started to see things in a much deeper, darker way. They started to see the code, right? So I want to play this for you. This is actually really brilliant. I love this.
Threads that was like horrified by the Americans that we never rioted or protested after the release of the Epstein files. And I was like, oh, fuck, we forgot to do that. And then I realized the way that the release the Epstein files made it impossible for us to go out and protest because it wasn't like some investigative journalist ran through the files like a normal fucking person or some government agency combed through them and then gave us a summary and then we were furious and like stormed the Capitol. No, they gave us 3 million files and thousands of us across the internet had to collectively band together and research different chunks of the files and then inform each other through social media because the news did fucking nothing. And by the time that we figured out that they were like, I don't know, eating people, all of our nervous systems were so collectively shot. And we were also mentally, emotionally, and physically drained from spending our whole life for 2 months consuming the most horrific information any human being could ever imagine, and then creating content about it to share it with our friends, that by the time we were done, there was nothing fucking left. And so now we're aware of everything in the files, and just when maybe people could get it together and then we could be like, okay, we've had a breath, now let's go protest, they went to war with fucking Iran. And I'm just furious that we have to like have jobs and exist in society and still try to like, I don't know, push for a better world while these people dedicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to being evil. And we end up in fucking situations like this, where they can tell us they're cannibals and doing it in such a way that leaves us without the ability to fight back against the fact that we are being governed by cannibals. So that's what I'm mad about today. So I saw a post on Threads that was like horrified by the Americans that we never rioted or protested after the release of the Epstein files. And I was like, oh, fuck. We forgot to do that. And then I realized the way that the release the Epstein files made it impossible for us to go out and protest because it wasn't like some investigative journalist ran through the files like a normal fucking person or some government agency combed through them and then gave us a summary and then we were furious and like stormed the Capitol. No, they gave us 3 million files and thousands of us across the internet had to collectively band together and research different chunks of the files and then inform each other through social media because the news did fucking nothing. And by the time that we figured out that they were like, I don't know, eating people, all of our nervous systems were so collectively shot. And we were also mentally, emotionally, and physically drained from spending our whole lives for 2 months, consuming the most horrific information any human being could ever imagine, and then creating content about it to share it with our friends, that by the time we were done, there was nothing fucking left. And so now we're aware of everything in the files, and just when maybe people could get it together and then we could be like, okay, we've had a breath, now let's go protest, they went to war with fucking Iran. And I'm just furious that we have to like have jobs and exist in society and still try to like, I don't know, push for a better world while these people dedicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to being evil. And we end up in fucking situations like this where they can tell us they're cannibals and doing it in such a way that leaves us without the ability to fight back against the fact that we are being governed by cannibals.
Bravo. Absolutely bravo. I mean, it's funny and it's also like on point, right? But the fact of the matter is that people are seeing through the code. This is what's happening. They're seeing through the code. And it's a good thing. It may be painful, but it's a good thing. And that brings us back to the top of the show, which is how do we align with a different code? Well, that's for you to figure out, right? That's for you to find your true north, whatever your true north is. That is for you to find your electromagnetic center and allow it to guide your life with a sense of purpose, with a sense of electricity, with a sense of passion. You don't need to know everything. It's impossible to know everything. But you need to know that you're on the right path, you're on the right trail. And I think we all know what that feels like. From time to time in our lives, we know that we're in the sweet spot. We have found the zone. And the key is to stay in the zone. And it's much harder to find the zone when we have all these distractions going on. And the distractions are, they impact our lives. But this is a time, this is a time where, and I say this time, like we're living in it this next year. It's huge. Huge. And with all this Aries coming in, it's like there is no time for delay. You must act. You must act upon what you know. You must act upon what you feel, and feel in a way that is not necessarily emotional, but feel from the center of your being. And I would call that God, by the way. That's the center of your being. All right, that's it. I'm out of here. Thanks for joining me on this Friday. We'll be back on Sunday night with some astrology. And next Friday, we get Russ back. Our old friend Russ. I'm sure he'll have plenty to say. Thanks for being here. Don't forget our sponsor, True Hemp Science. Right there, spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS and get a goodie bag on top of your order. These are the essential products to help you stay centered and get through times like the times we're in right now. Both long-term with the tinctures and the short-term applications with the gummies. Chris has some other products. He's starting to introduce Shilajit with some of his products, which is really cool. So go on over there at truehempscience.com, get $100 more, type in 15MINS, get the goodie bag, and celebrate the circle of life. All right, I'm out of here. Have yourselves a great day. Crack your code. Robert Phoenix signing off.